been told that you should write a book. You've gone through a transformation, you've grown from a trauma, and you've been told you should write a book about it, or you feel within yourself that it's time for you to get your book out there, but you're wondering, how in the world am I going to do that with everything else I've got going on? I got you. The Truth to Transformation Book Bootcamp. It's coming up starting August 31st, and it runs through the entire month of September. 30 days and 30 minutes a day. It's a book bootcamp that will help you get your book done. I'll walk you all the way through my framework so you can get very clear on your book's purpose, who your reader is, and get clear on the ideas you want to share in your book, picking the type of autobiography you want to make to approach your audience, and then doing the work of getting the content on the page. I'm walking you all the way through that. And yes, your book will be edited so that by the end of the 30 days, your book will be self-published ready. Especially for someone like you who is super, super busy. This is going to be the game changer for you. This is going to help you move the needle. Even if you're halfway done with your book, maybe you're not starting from scratch, this bootcamp is still great for you. So go to bootcamp.melissathomas.co/sign up. That's bootcamp.melissathomas.co/sign up. And Melissa is spelled with 2 L's and 2 S's. Go to that website, sign up for your spot today. I'm only allowing 10 spots, so be sure to get your spot today.
That's something that I learned how to do over time, was to be a good decision maker. And that was with some of the previous bosses that I had. One boss in particular, he would always say, make a decision and stick to it. He said, being from the country, it's like he would always say, it's a lot of dead squirrels in the middle of the street that couldn't make a decision. Don't be one of them.
So, whoa. Run that back. You said that real fast. Good evening. Happy Wednesday, my winners and goal-getters. Welcome to another edition of the Getting the Win Show. I am your host, Melissa T, the Procrastination Bully. And for the first time in a long time, this episode is actually an interview. So I am happy and excited to introduce you to the one and only Keisha L. Blair. That L is important. You will find out why later. But Keisha L. Blair, she is known online and in corporate spaces in speaking engagements as Keisha The Electrician. This is a woman who has decades of experience in the skilled trades, and an electrician, that's not something that was random. That's not something she did in like her mid-adulthood. Being an electrician is something she has always wanted to be, even from childhood. So in this episode, we get to hear her origin story and how she developed a sense of leadership, not only for herself, but how she's able to train others to be great leaders. We get into her business, what she's doing now, the different speaking engagements she does now. We get into her origin story and the lessons that she's learned as she's progressed through life. She's a mom of 4, so we get to talking about her being a mom as well as an entrepreneur, and during her time in the corporate world as well. So you're getting to hear the whole transformation story for Keisha. And yes, she is an aspiring author. Her book is on the way. So in this episode, you get to hear that as well. Clock out an hour for this one. Normally my episodes run roughly 30 to 40 minutes. This one is closer to an hour. So if you're watching this, be sure to avail yourself an hour for this one. But all of the gems are juicy and worth the time. Enjoy. As promised, we have the beautiful Keisha Blair in the building. Keisha, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you.
Hey, yes, I appreciate the invite. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So as you guys heard in the intro, Keisha is somebody to know, okay? Like this is somebody you want as a great friend, as an ally, as your coach, most importantly. Like Keisha is big on leadership. So I would actually love to start with that. Like why is leadership so important to you, and why do you feel that it's important to coach others in that vein? Kind of talk about that.
Well, first of all, leadership is important because, leaders add value and solve problems. And that's one thing that I strive to do in every environment that I'm in, is that I try to just add value wherever I go, and I try to solve a problem wherever I am, whether it's me just showing up, helping somebody out, or just like, looking to see what I can do to help somebody do something better or even help myself do something. My mind is always searching. I tell people my mind works like Tetris. It's always trying to take the pieces to the puzzle and move them around and do what they need to do. And why is it important for me to share with others? Because I think that we all have room to grow. And sometimes people don't know, some people aren't ready for that conversation because people think they're
True.
at a level that they're really not. So there's a difference in being, what is it? Extremely confident and overly confident. It's a difference.
Mm.
So some people may be overly confident. They're not ready for that conversation to figure out how can I get to the next level because they think they're already there.
Ooh, that's good.
Mm.
That's good. Bookmark that. We're gonna come back to that. But to that point of leadership, obviously you do workshops for, for kids like high school kids, but you also do one-on-one coaching. So kind of talk about each of those offerings and what that looks like.
Yeah, so I actually do workshops, then I also do one-on-one coaching, and then I do technical leadership development. So for my one-on-one coaching, I'll start with that one. That is my CEO mindset. And CEO stands for create, eliminate, organize. You have to
Mhm.
create the systems that you need to put those things in place. You have to eliminate the things that no longer serve you, all of the distractions and different things like that. Then you have to organize what's left in order to help you move forward into your business. Because sometimes people will just be doing a lot and you're not moving anywhere. You're not getting anything done, but yet you've been working for like 8 hours and you ain't got nothing done because you're just doing busy work and you're not being productive. So I just try to put systems in place to help people to understand, okay, well, let's start with the routine. Tell me what you do. I don't even try to go in and change anybody. And I learned that from being, just leading teams. Whenever I've taken over teams, that's the worst thing you can do is try to go over and try to restructure everything without trying to see how it works, because some things may work for that person or may work for that team. So what I do is to try to see, okay, let me show me what you're doing. Let's see your routine now. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. Tell me what you would like to make better. And then we go forward to figuring out what we need to eliminate. And then we try to organize everything else. And a lot of people don't even realize that you have some gaps in your schedule that you're just not doing anything, that you can actually replace it with being productive. And
Mm.
sometimes sleeping is being productive because you have to how to regenerate just so you can get up and do something different. So I try to just shed light on
Yes.
different things like that for the one-on-one coaching. And then, so what I do for the corporate environment, like I say, my love is with the technicians. I love to talk to the maintenance teams and people in skilled trades. And for them, it always starts with communication. So I'm an extreme execution coach under Dr. Eric Thomas. And so I have a workshop right now that's called high frequency communication. And I talk to them about basically how to adapt, how to build, how to communicate, and how to drive. So that is my ABCD framework. And that's where it starts with, but it always starts with the communication piece. And then for the schools, I talk to the kids about the benefit of the skill trades, and I have my build framework. And build stands for be self-aware, understand others, improve how you work, lead by example, and develop forward.
Mm. That's good. Run all of that back. You who's watching, run all of that backwards. Like all of those were gems. Like I loved, and this was one of the things I asked Keisha before we got on. Like I love her frameworks, and I wanted her to go through all of them because they're very powerful in my opinion. And I love that you have one for each of those different audiences because they each have different needs. And I love that
Hmm.
you were able to create something to meet each of those needs. So let's zero in on the flight assessment real quick
Hmm.
because that's the bedrock for all of them, right? Like
Yes,
you're very big on the importance of self-awareness.
that's
So
right.
I'd love to start with yours. Like what was your reaction when you first took yours and saw your results?
So the first time I took the flight assessment was actually after I was I'm going to use the term eliminated from corporate when they eliminated my position. And I felt like I didn't know where I didn't know what my next move was because I didn't know who I was without being the first female senior manager of maintenance. It was like, who was I? I had no idea. So I'm sitting there
Mm.
trying to figure out, what do I do now that I'm not going to work every day at 5 a.m. and leaving at 8 p.m. and answering emails and phone calls and text messages in the middle of the night? What do I do? So I was already a part of Next Level Speakers Academy. And I believe it was probably something I may have seen at the end of one of ET's, one of his Thank God It's Mondays or something like that. But I saw the flight assessment come up. So I looked at it, I researched it. I was like, you know what? Talked about how you can find clarity and find out who you are. And how to move forward. So I took the flight assessment, and I wasn't surprised by it. It said that my highest was air traffic controller, which is someone who likes to follow rules and processes and systems. Like, yep, sounds like me. Um, sounds like me. And then my secondary was pilot, which basically it talked about making decisions. So that's something that I learned how to do over time, was to be a good decision maker. And that was with some of the previous bosses that I had. One boss in particular, he would always say, make a decision and stick to it. He said, being from the country, it's like he would always say, it's a lot of dead squirrels in the middle of the street that couldn't make a decision. Don't be one of them.
Whoa,
So
whoa, 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 whoa. Run that back.
he
You said
said, he
that
used to
real
always say,
fast.
it's a lot
Run
of
that back.
dead squirrels in the middle of the street that could not make a decision. So don't be one of them.
That's good. That's good.
Basically,
That's good.
make a decision and stick to it. So I learned how to be just to be a thought leader and to be a good decision maker by making sure that I, thought about the outcomes before I made that decision.
Mm.
So as far as me being in leadership, that's one of the lessons that I learned about being in leadership, was how to be a better decision maker.
Yeah, to that point, I would love to, because you are air traffic controller, you do see all the details. How do you do that quickly? Because as someone who is in a leadership position, you're not only looked to make a decision, but you're looked to make them quickly. So how did you learn to make, critical decisions, but quickly without second guessing yourself?
I do second guess myself, but sometimes you don't have time to weigh out, okay, which one should I do, this A, B, C, or D? It's like, okay, we need to do this now, and you have to own it. And sometimes things don't always work out the way that you want it to, and then you have to just pivot. So you just take what
Mm.
happened, you learn from that, and then you keep on going. You don't try to go back or try to blame it on somebody else. No, you own it. You take responsibility for it, which what good leaders should do anyway. And then also another thing that I learned how to do, I may not always have the right answer. I have to go to my team and ask them for help, because somebody else may know something a little bit more or a little bit better than I do. So I would always incorporate someone where I thought may have been the best person for that situation or that job, and I would let them make the decision.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you shared that. That's important. For you watching, you always hear me talking about making sure you have a who. This is exactly what we're talking about. It's important to, even if you only have one person in your corner, perhaps you're not in a team environment, there is something powerful in having even one other person to bounce your ideas off of, to share your feelings with,
Yes.
especially in those moments where you didn't have time in the moment to second guess yourself. Maybe that person is the person you're like, did I do this right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
And they're not in the situation, so they can give you an objective view of your scenario and be like, no, that sounded reasonable, that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
And I love that you talked a little bit about that sort of corporate journey that you had. Share with our audience like your origin story, because youdabomb.com, like you're juggling a lot of things. and
Well,
and in addition to obviously, running your own business and having this sort of core message of leadership, you're somebody who's a technician. Like, in a way, you're kind of a history maker, as someone who's in the skilled trades. You're a woman, and let's keep it real, you're a Black woman
hmm
in the skilled trades. So I'd love for you to talk about that, talk about your origin story and how you ended up on that trajectory.
so I started out in the electrical field. Let me try to think of the year. I think it was 90. It was 95. So this is 30 years that I've been in the skilled trades. And I started out 21 years old. I had a son who was 9 months old at the time, and I did not like it. It was just like, man, I couldn't believe that I was actually on this job site to where I was working. I think my first project was 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And I was only
Wow.
making $6.50 an hour. And I was like, what did I get myself into? Oh my goodness. And I was married at the time. So it was just, it just took a toll on relationship, took a toll on me being, I was actually, oh my goodness, I was overweight at that time, as I just had a child. So it was just a lot going on at that time, but I stuck with it. There were so many things that I started and then I didn't complete. One of the things
Mm.
was I had gone to ITT fresh out of high school. Well, let me back up a little bit. So I graduated from high school in the 11th grade. I walked with my
Oh,
class as a senior, but I graduated, had all my credits by the time I finished my 11th grade year. Loved math and science, had a dream of always going to MIT. I wanted to be an electrical engineer. And my parents didn't have MIT money, so I went to ITT. Um, so I went to
do what you
ITT,
gotta do.
electronic engineering technology. It wasn't what I thought it was, because like I had my eyes set in high school on being an engineer. So I dropped out of that, didn't finish, and that's when I met my husband. We actually met in high school, but we got married. Then we had a child, moved to Memphis, Tennessee, and because I was in California, so I moved to
Okay.
Memphis. And my older brother, he is an electrician. He's been an electrician 1 year longer than me. He told me about a program called IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, about the apprenticeship
Yep.
program. And I went and signed up, took the test, and got one of the highest scores in the class. They used to have a hand-eye coordination exam, so it was like I'm ambidextrous, so I was passed that test and got one of the many things that I've done better than a lot of men that I know, but we'll save that for a later conversation. But but so after I got into, and got on the job, we were working as an apprentice, first project, and I'm just like, this is really not what I thought it was, being on a construction site. I had never worked on a construction site ever. And I was out here, it was so hot, it was dirty. I didn't even know have the right tools. So I worked for this company in Memphis called McCrory Electric, and they actually bought my first set of tools for me and let me pay them off weekly through my paycheck. I still have most of those tools to this day now, 30 years later.
That's
So
cool.
without them, I wouldn't have even had the tools that I have to do the job that I was hired for. And another thing that they did was they put me in the material shed, and with everything that people needed to work, it was in this shed. So I learned what a lot of the things were called, which a lot of apprentices never had that opportunity. So I had an opportunity
Mm,
and an edge on others, and I thought I was being punished as opposed to being out working with doing the work. And it was like, no, I learned so much as a first year apprentice. So then I went from there, and so after I finished the apprenticeship program in 2000, I went and got my license. And after I got my license, so started out making like $6.50. Fast forward, it was a lot more than that. I was probably like in the 20s or 30s at that point. But I went
okay.
back to school at ITT and I got 2 degrees. I finished that, even though I thought it really wasn't what I wanted. But I had this thing where I felt like I had to complete something, what I started. And then also at the time, so then at that time, I had 3 children. So I wanted to show my children that, you don't just start things and you don't finish it. You have to complete it. So I went back to ITT and I got my associate's degree in computer networking systems. And then I went back and got my bachelor's degree in information technology. Um,
Nice.
so my children could actually see that graduation was a part of, like, it was a process that you needed to go through. So then after that, I worked in construction for about 15 years and I decided to go into maintenance. And I went into maintenance, and because usually on a construction site, you usually, once the project is completed, you basically work yourself out of a job. Then you go back to for me, it was the union hall. We signed up for
Okay.
another project if it were available. And that was the beauty of it. There was anywhere from 30 plus contractors that we could possibly go work for here in Memphis. And if there was no work here, I can go travel and work somewhere else, because that's the beauty of being in the union. There's unions all across the country. International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, I can go and sign up in any union as long as they have work. I can go work. So then after that, let me see, what was that, about 2000? So I went into maintenance. And when I went into maintenance, to maintain the equipment that I actually wired up, the first company I worked for here in Memphis was Riviana Foods. And I was the highest paid person in the maintenance department. I was an electrical and instrumentation technician.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of guys didn't like that because I was also the only woman that worked in the maintenance department. but but I learned a lot there. I was glad that I was able to work there. And that was my first maintenance job. And I went on to work for several other companies here in Memphis, and then worked in maintenance for about 15 years at the height of my career, up until last year, in, I'm gonna say, March of last year. I was the first female senior manager of the maintenance department for FedEx Express Properties and Facilities. Um,
Wow.
Still one of the best companies I've ever worked for, but they had a downsizing. My position was eliminated. And at that point, I was elevated into entrepreneurship. So I decided,
Hey.
and it was like, I could have gone back and gotten a job somewhere else. And I felt like, you know what? I think I'm going to bet on myself. So I started to develop and pour more into me, and I developed my own company, Blair Investments, to where now I speak to children about the benefit of the skilled trades. I speak to technicians about how to go from being their tool belt to team lead to manager to leader, to help them figure out what is that transition, because um, I know what they didn't teach you in the apprenticeship school. And one thing they don't teach you about is basically the emotional intelligence side, because they want to develop your physical skill. So I'm helping them to develop their mental skill. So that's something that I help them do as well. So I'll stop right there. I know that was a lot.
It was great. No, that was great. Thank you. Like over the course of that journey, did you encounter, or I guess obviously you encountered it, but how did you deal with the sexism? Let's call it that. Like how did you deal with gentlemen who would bump up against the fact that you are a woman in a position of leadership, and how did you communicate with them when they challenged you?
So a lot of the let me see. So first of all, there's no HR on a construction site.
Exactly.
So you just had to just deal with it, right? And a lot of the times, most of the times when you work, we all know each other because we've been around. You go from job to job to job. So a lot of us journeymen work in the same union. We know each other. So I really didn't really have that problem a lot. I mean,
Okay.
there were a few challenges here and there, but for the most part, when you work for a company and you get to know the people within that company, they pretty much take care of you. So I was a repeat offender to several companies here in the union in Memphis, which was IBW 474. And then when I went into work in corporate, a lot of those same people that I worked with out in the field, they actually applied for positions. And when I got into leadership and got into management, so I knew them coming in, I knew their work ethic and they knew me. So it was just a different type of relationship. But for the ones that didn't know me, I would always tell them, I don't have to get used to you. You have to get used to me, because I've been working around men for a long time and you have never worked around a woman. So,
That part.
we need to talk about how you can kind of balance that out on your end, because I know what I'm getting myself into. And I know
Mm.
sometimes guys are going to be intimidated. Some guys aren't going to want to, they'll want to work maybe with me. They want me to work for them, but a lot of them don't want to work for me. So those are some of the
Ooh.
challenges. Yeah. And it was just basically, I just told them, like, you don't have to adjust how you work, because I'm a fair person. And ultimately I'm a technician at heart. And my goal has always been to make sure that I put things in place so that technicians can excel and do the things that they need to do on a higher level.
Yeah. And this is where I like wanted to come back and bring that bookmark that you mentioned earlier in terms of leadership.
Hmm.
Um, Talk about because one of the hallmarks of leadership is being able to, for all intents and purposes, replicate yourself, like being able to develop other leaders who you're working with. So talk about like, have you had that experience, like
Oh,
as you've been
absolutely.
on
I mean,
construction sites? Talk about that.
I've I've helped to train managers and help them become leaders, like, all across the country. So one of the things that I was most proud of when I worked for FedEx Express is that I had an opportunity to help them transition several locations across the country from vendor maintenance to facility maintenance for the company. So I had an opportunity to work with the managers or help them to hire their team and different things like that, and help them to develop their skill. And then also, before I actually went into management for them, I worked in their training group. So one of the things that I was so grateful for is when I became a senior manager, I actually was the manager that had the training team, the technical training team. So that was an honor for me to not only be one of the people that helped to start that division for technical leadership, but also to be able to have it under, in my department, so that I can help to develop that group and help to develop technicians. But I can't even count how many technicians I helped hire, helped to train, and then managers that I've helped. But it started with me just understanding what I need, what would I want if I was in their shoes. And so I would talk to the technicians to see what they needed, what
Mhm.
they were missing, or what would help them to grow. And I worked to try to develop it and make change, because one of the reasons why I felt like I wanted to go into leadership anyway was because as a technician, I felt like I didn't have a real voice. And the only way to make real
Mm,
change was for me to climb the corporate ladder. So it's something that I wanted to work towards, is to put better things in place for technicians.
that's good. That's good. Kind of dial into that voice part because that resonated with me.
Mhm.
Kind of talk about like, did you find those solutions in terms of simply talking with some of the other technicians, or were you mostly just going by what you felt you needed, like on the come up, like, okay, this is what was missing when I was coming up. I'm going to incorporate this, like to make sure other technicians have a voice as well.
Well, no. So the first thing that I would do whenever I took over a team is I would meet with everybody on the team. I would meet with all the technicians one on one, and I would ask them, some of the things that they would like to see better for their group. for the company and for, just for them. And I got a lot of insight that way. And then whenever I would take over a group that would be deemed as a difficult group, I would always look for the manager that had it before me that I heard was worked well with that team to figure out what they did. And I had one of my peers that told me that one of the things that he did was he said I would feed him and I would listen to him. So I incorporated that into some of the things that I did with one of the teams that was deemed to be one of the most difficult within the company. And that's what I did. I fed them and I listened to them. And every time I felt like, happy people come to work. And the reason why they were unhappy was because there was something happening, or the reason why they weren't showing up, it was because there was something happening that was not favorable with them. So I wanted to know what that something was. And if it's something that I could do to change it, that was within policy, then I would work towards changing it. But I would never have known that if I was just focused on the work and not focused on the person. So there has to be a balance there between the person and then also the work that needs to be done.
Indeed, indeed. Now, given everything that we've discussed with your leadership, the way you've worked with different teams, talk about the other side of your life. Like how has leadership been incorporated in your life as a mom, like in terms of the way you raise your kids? Kind of talk about how you were able to incorporate those lessons on that side.
Oh my goodness. So I'm gonna have to say this honestly. It all started with my faith. I thought about when I was younger, my dad seeing me minister would make me go to church, me and my sisters and my brothers, whether we wanted to or not. And I was like, why are we doing this? And as I got older, I made sure that my children, they were rooted in faith just like I was, because you train a child up in the way that they should go. Um, so I wanted to make sure that they had that foundation just like I had that foundation. And as far as leadership, I feel like, we're going to go back to the flight assessment. The first person I had to learn how to lead was myself and
Hmm.
understand I don't know everything. There are some things that I'm going to be challenged with, and there are some things that I'm going to have to ask for help on. And I can't be afraid to ask for help or think that I'm so confident in me that I know everything. I don't do that. So, and even just talking and letting my team know, being transparent in where we are in certain situations as opposed to trying to sugarcoat or cover things up. I think most people that know me, they pretty much know if you ask me a question, I'm going to be honest with you. It may not be what you want to hear, but this is when and if I can't say something because of whatever, sometimes structure things come down, we can't talk about it. I'll just say I can't talk about it. I'll do that before I make something up. So,
Hmm.
um, but as far as leadership, and I do the same thing with my children. I've tried to have that open door policy with them to where even sometimes, they'll say things to me and it's like, oh, that's a pearl clutching moment. You know what I mean? But I can't, or I may want to be like, oh, and be upset and go off, but I try not to react and think about how can I respond. And
Mm,
then the same thing in a corporate environment or when you're with a team, just because something happens, you can react any type of way, but there's a certain type of way to respond. And it
very
doesn't
true.
have to be where you have to fly off the handle or put people down. So, and even, growing up with, I'm going to say growing up with my children, because I started my first had when I was 21. So that as I become older and they become older, we've had conversations to where it's like, okay, let's talk about it. Because if you felt like I did something that you, that wasn't favorable with you, then let's talk about it so I can tell you why I did what I did. And maybe you can understand it from a different perspective. And it's not, maybe it wasn't the right choice. So tell me how it affected you and what we can do now to try to make it better. So I try to have those open conversations with my children as well.
Beautiful. Did you have them on like an interval, or was it like as needed kind of thing? Because some people like they'll set it up where it's like once every quarter or like once every 6 months. Like was yours just kind of organic, or did you have like a set time
I
where you
don't
would
know. I
sit down
think
with
we
them?
would have meetings. I think, because, my kids, when we were all in the same house, now they're older and everything. But I would try to have, we would have like family nights or do things together. And then all of a sudden a conversation may just start. So it wasn't anything that was scheduled, but I think we would have them often. And it would
Awesome.
be
That's
like,
beautiful.
kind of, yeah. And I would invite them to just, tell me things and then it's like, probably overreacting inside, but that's not what's coming. I was like, okay, so how did you feel? It's like,
Screaming
interesting.
internally.
Yeah, my heart's back. But I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they just told me that. But it's like, to learn if I overreact, and what that's going to do is shut them down and where they're not going to share anything else
Yes.
with me.
Yes. What have you seen as the end result of that in terms of the way they move through life now? Because I think essentially most of them are grown now, right? Like the last one just
Yes.
started college.
Yeah,
So
he
kind
just
of talk
started.
about
And actually,
how they move through life now.
Look, he called me right before we started on this podcast and was asking me about his books. I'm like, I didn't order, I don't have to, they're not my books. I don't have to order books. But no, but I did just tell him, go and look, go and talk to this person, go to the registrar, go talk to the bursar. You know, these are the people who will talk to your RA and see, because you should have enough money on your balance to where you can purchase books. So just giving him the avenue that he needs to take as opposed to me doing it for him. So I'm
Yeah.
telling him the steps so he can be active. Okay, we'll talk about it once. If you need help, you can call me. But ultimately, I need him to put the work in, because it's, you know, you're working at 18 now. This is your life, and you have to develop the steps that you need to take to get to where you want to be.
Very true. Very true. So, just out of curiosity, because you sound like you have had it all together this whole time. She's like, "Oh no." So, I would love to touch on like what have been your internal. I don't want to say struggles, but your internal challenges. Like, were you
Mm.
somebody that ever dealt with imposter syndrome? Did you
Oh,
ever deal with like low self-esteem issues? Were you ever insecure in any way? Like, kind of talk about the challenges you've encountered as you continue to learn yourself and then continue to grow, and how you
oh,
overcame them.
oh, all the time. You know, just like as I continue to overcome certain things. So even, I mean, the one thing I struggle with always, I think my whole life has always been my weight. I mean,
Mm.
even I look at pictures when I was like 9 years old, and I see this picture in my head. I think I was in fourth grade, and I had on this pink fluffy dress, and I mean, I just looked like a little butterball. So
Oh.
you know, and then as of course as you get older, you lose weight, and I'm getting to the, you know, I got to the point to where I, you know, in high school. And then after I got married and then I had a child, and it's like I immediately went from like 170 to like 250, you know, so gaining all that weight at one time. And then I, you know, had four children. So I've lost weight and gained weight several times. And then this last time, it was mostly due to stress.
Mm.
When I gained weight, I got all the way, I was 277 pounds. And
Wow.
the reason why I remember that number is because 277 is one leg of, of a three-phase circuit. So I know,
Nice.
you know, 277 volts. So I'm like, I was 277 pounds. This is crazy. And I just looked in the mirror and realized that I didn't like what I saw. And
Mm.
nobody, you know, some people just accept it. I wasn't going to accept it. And I knew that I had to change it. So I started subtle, just started doing small things, you know, like cutting out soda, because I would drink Coca-Cola like it was crazy, right? And then stop eating a lot of sugary snacks. I would get up from my desk and walk around, because I was at my desk. Like when I got there at 5 a.m., didn't leave till 8. I may have gotten up once, twice to go use the restroom, but that was it. So I started getting up in more intervals and walking more. That's where it started. And then, you know, just stress was a part of it too, because my blood pressure was 181 over 114. So yeah, that's pretty high stroke level.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had ended up in the hospital a couple of times just behind my stress levels. And then, so honestly, I felt like probably one of the best things that could have happened to me was they eliminated my position. And it caused me to
Mm.
just look at things differently. So I started working on me, because all the time and energy I was pouring into a company, I was neglecting myself. So now
Yes.
what I do is I pour more into me, and I make sure that I watch the things that I do. So one of the things that I wanted to do, I was pre-diabetic. So I went to the doctor. They put me on a GLP-1. So that
Mm.
was how it started. And it was like, okay, but every time they wanted to raise my dosage up, I refused to, because I said, no, if it's good at this level, I'm going to leave it here and I'm going to put the work in. So I started jogging. I started drinking water. I started, you know, making sure that I got better rest and doing all these things to where, no, I don't want the medicine to do the work. I want to do the work. If it's going to regulate my blood sugar, if it's doing it at this low dosage, let's keep it there. So, because I didn't want to become reliant on it more so
Mm.
than what I had to. So now here I am down to from 277 all the way down to 193. Um, yeah, so that's 84 pounds that I've actually lost. It took a minute. It took a little over a year to lose that much, but I work hard to maintain it and to keep it down. And I weigh myself every morning. Some people say, oh, well, that's not good. Well, it may not be good for you, but it is for me. Excuse me, because it keeps me mindful of, okay, where I am and what I need to do to maintain this. So it works for me. Um, and then, like I say, I watch what I eat. I'm going to say I cut a lot of stuff out, um, but I still try to eat like portion control. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
want some chips, I'll still eat chips, but I won't before I would get a family size bag. Now I may get like the little snack size bag. Do you know what I mean? So it's just to
Yep.
cure that craving to where it's like, I don't have to eat. And if I want pizza, most of the time my pizza, I love pizza. I can eat it every day, but I'll try to eat cauliflower crust and I just get cheese on it and maybe pineapples. Yes, I put pineapples on my pizza. Uh,
No shade. No
Pineapples
judgment.
and veggies. So that's basically what I like to eat on pizza. But it all started with just me. And honestly, I really have to say that started with the flight assessment. It started with me taking this and
That's
going
good.
through those 19 pages and seeing myself like, how in the heck could this thing know me like this? And all I did was answer some questions that had nothing to do with the answers that it spit out. So, wanting to know more about myself, I became an extreme execution coach or change agent, to where it's like, okay, the more I learn more about me, it helps me to learn more about others. Ultimately, it helps me to learn more about myself. So I take that information that I'm learning currently, because we have weekly meetings, and that's what I use, and I infuse it in every one of my programs.
That's good. So the weight was one challenge you mentioned,
Hmm.
but I did hear something like kind of buried within that I would love to touch on, because this is something I've covered on my show very often, because I've been guilty of it myself, which is when you have a job or a role, something you're doing, you'll end up burying yourself and your own well-being
Yeah.
in the duties of the role. So, like, is it correct to say that it really did take you no longer having the job to finally like, oh, I've been
Yeah.
abandoning myself this whole time? Or like, did you kind of have kernels of it before, but like you weren't really taking action on it before?
Oh
Or
no,
was it
girl, I
like,
wasn't
was
worried
it that
about it.
hard break that you were like, okay, never mind, like let me just focus on this?
Oh no, I was like, I mean, and I worked for FedEx Express. I had purple blood running through my veins. Seriously, it was like, no, I was born and bred. I was doing what I had to do by any means necessary. It was like this was I. I promise you, I operated like I own a company.
Ooh.
Seriously, I
Mm,
did, and that's who I am. I think anybody who's worked with me, anytime I show up for someone, I treat it like it's mine. So that's what
mm,
I was doing, and I wasn't worried about myself. I still went to the doctor periodically and I got my checkups maybe annually, but I wasn't focused on me. It was me focusing on my group, I was focused on everything else except for myself. So
right.
I completely 100% neglected me, not realizing that if I'm no longer here, what's going to happen to my family, what's going to happen, you know what I mean? All of these things. So when that one part was taken away, like I said, I had to ask myself, I mean, I didn't know who I was beyond my job. I
Yeah.
really did not. I had no idea, because anytime somebody asked me who about me, it reverted back to what I did, not who I was.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about, and that's what you just said is extremely powerful. And I want to dig into that for my folks listening, because a lot of times we, especially we as women, like we are
Hmm.
definitely guilty of that. So talk about, once you did take the assessment, like that process of you reclaiming yourself, like who am I? Not what I do, like not who I do it for, like who am I? Like talk about that process of reclaiming yourself and remembering who you are.
Oh man. So actually it was two coaches that I had. One of them was I'm gonna call him Aaron Victor, because I know he's got another last name, but Coach Aaron, I call him that. So Coach
Yeah.
Aaron was my one of my first coaches through Extreme Execution. I worked with him, and he helped me to uncover a lot of things that I didn't even realize were going on. And then
Mm.
after that, it was Mustafa Ghonem,
Moose,
CEO for
man, that
ETA.
dude.
So Moose, yeah, Moose asked me a question one day, and he asked me, and he said basically it was about me, and every answer I gave involved somebody else. And he was just like, "No, I'm not.
Ooh,
But you're. I asked you about you, but you're still talking about what you do for other people, or how every other people are included in your answers. So I want you to answer without including anybody else." And I couldn't do it. I had to think about it. So that caused me too. So just having these people in place that want to see you grow, it's like, it makes you feel uncomfortable. And I had to realize I had to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and doing the work, doing the root work, doing the work inside, to where it's like, okay, well, who am I without being a mom, without being a senior manager, without being an electrician, without being what is the core of me? What are some of the things that make me happy? What are some of the things that I like to do? And I think I found that when I went through Ramadan this year. My son, I'm not Muslim, but my son's father is. And my son, so he got baptized with me last year. I got baptized with him actually. I was baptized when I was younger, but I did it again with him last year. And so as Ramadan came about, I told him I wanted to go through Ramadan. And I felt like, oh, once again, why am I putting myself through this? But Day 3, I felt like I was going to break. I felt like I'm not going to do this. I do not see why. And I think I was on a call with Moose, and he was like, "This is my favorite part of the year." And I'm like, "Why?" It's like, you're not eating, you can't drink all day. What the heck? This is crazy. I'm about to starve to death. So on that evening of the third night, I said, okay, when I felt like I wanted to break, I have to keep books all over the house. So I reached for a book, and I keep books by my bed. And I think the first one I reached for was called Seven Frequencies of Communication. And I read that one. I said, no, I don't
Shout
want
out to
that one.
Erwin
And then
Pattinson.
I reached for a book I had on my shelf for about 6 months beside my bed. I had never cracked it open. The book was Project 369, and the scripture edition. I started reading that book. I couldn't put it down. By the time the next morning came, I stood in my kitchen and I cried because I realized the power of I am. And
Mm,
I understood that for once in my life, that I saw myself as God saw me, for something that He created. And every time that I said all the things that I wasn't, anything negative that came behind the words I am, that I was referring to God, because He created me in His image. And I cried. I cried because I would never say those negative things about God. So why would I say them about myself? And when I looked in the mirror that
exactly.
morning, that was the first time I saw myself for me. So from that moment on, anytime I felt like I had hunger pains, or I felt like, I wanted to drink during the sun up to sundown, I grabbed my book and I started reading, because you can't have two thoughts at one time. So I was feeding myself mentally, and I didn't have to worry about feeding myself physically. So from that point, I made it. And it was like, it was a different transitional period for me in that point. But ultimately, I had to find myself by looking within, and that's where I found God.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. This is another spot where you need to run it back. You're watching this, watching this or listening to it, like run this part back. I recently, like I want to say about a couple months back, I had Lisa A. Smith back on the show
Mm-hmm.
because she was promoting her 30-day vegan challenge. But we were talking about the stress part, the chronic stress,
Mm-hmm.
to what you mentioned about what you were experiencing with the job. Doing a fast like that is a game changer, because once you cut out all of the processed stuff, cut out the sugar, cut out all of that, your mind starts to clear. Like
Yes.
it's a game changer when your mind is clear and it's not being affected by anything else. You'll be surprised the amount of ideas you get.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're gonna have to journal a lot, because you'll be full of ideas and be like, oh, this is gonna be great for this person, this is gonna be great for this person. You know
Yes.
what I mean? And you come up with such a wealth of information. And to Keisha's point, if you're somebody who's spiritual and you've never fasted before, doing a fast is indeed the fastest way, not a play on words. It's literally the fastest way for you to draw closer to your deity, whether you're fasting for
Yes.
Jesus or you're fasting for Muhammad, whatever your deity is, like it's the fastest way for you to draw closer, because you're far more focused, because now you're not dealing with the hunger pains as much. You're
Mm-hmm.
just, and the important thing that Keisha pointed out is replacement. Like it's not
Yeah.
enough to just not eat. Like your brain is just going to think about, okay, when's the next meal? And your brain will literally mark time until sundown. No, when
Mm-hmm.
you replace it with something that is constructive and aligned with what you want to become or who you want to be, that's when you really fast forward your transformation. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to say this too. So it was like I said, when I had that experience, and like you said, it just draws you closer, because I realized that I thought about everything completely different. um, Sugar, food, processes, all the different things that we have and the things that we consume, because we don't grow them. Yes, we purchase them, and some things we cook, but you don't know what's in that stuff that comes from the grocery
You
store.
don't.
We have to just pray over and hope that it's whole, and that it's whole. Even when you get organic, you really don't know. But just having a clear mind.
Yes.
Um, I realized then, from what I heard Moose say, it's his favorite time of the year, and I understood why. Because it's everything that you think about is completely, totally different. You analyze, you assess, you you're very thoughtful in how you move forward. And even, I know I talk fast. People who spoke to me during around that time, I did not speak as fast, because I was thinking about what I wanted to say before I actually said it. And I
Mm,
believe around that time was when I joined the inner circle, the UOU mastermind. So being on those calls as well, just getting fed and getting up, and um, even more so. So here it is now. I woke up this morning at 4:30. And somebody asked me, "Why are you up so early?" And I said, "Well, you can blame ET for that because repetition creates a pattern.
Yep.
And sometimes we get up 6. And I think when you were in, you said you guys are doing it every day, right? So at least we get a break a day or so. But here it is, the one day that I get a break, I'm still waking up at 4:30 in the morning. Like I got to be on a call at
Happens.
5 a.m. So I got up, I got dressed like I normally do, and I started working. I came to work. I came in here and started grinding in my office. So yeah.
Absolutely, man. Like that. Yeah, you guys, you who are watching, you hear me talk about the OU Mastermind all the time. Keisha's one of my sisters in there. Like it is a phenomenal family in there, and we learn so much from each other in
Hmm.
there. So this goes back to what I was talking about with having a who. Like it's important to be able to sharpen yourself off of someone else or off of a community, like being a
Hmm.
part of a community with like-minded people who are focused, who have no ulterior motives whatsoever. Not all masterminds are created equal. This one, it's a family, and we're all about growth in there. Like there's no, first of all, ET doesn't allow for that. Let me just be
Hmm.
clear about that. Like if you come in there with ulterior motives, I made this
So you're
joke,
gonna be
Keisha. This
out.
was I made this with our like some of our older cohort. This is before you joined, but like we're essentially white blood cells in there because we've had people, Keisha, that have come in there with that try to come in with ulterior motives. We will very quickly suss them out and point to support, like, hey, handle this, and trust me, they do. Like the
Oh.
leadership and the coaches swoop in very quickly because they want to maintain the harmony and the
Hmm.
that sort of familial relationship that we all have as a mastermind family.
Hmm.
So it's like we're all pointed this way. If somebody comes in that's like swimming this way, it's real easy to spot it and like you know what I'm saying, get them out of there.
Hmm.
So yeah, and we're definitely blessed to have you, Keisha. Appreciate you
Yeah.
so
Look,
much.
and then even thinking about this, how many more? Your brain's on fire at 5 a.m. in the morning. By the time we get out that call, you're
Absolutely.
not going back to sleep. You got too much
Can't.
stuff going on in your head.
Can't. Absolutely, absolutely. So lastly, I want to wrap up with this because it's important to give people flowers while they're alive. You know what I'm saying? So I would love to talk about the most recent, you were published in a magazine recently. Talk about that article, the experience, and the photo shoot. Because let me tell y'all, them photos were fire. Okay. So like talk about that experience.
Well, I got to give shout out to my photographer, Jarvis Realford with Brand New Consulting Group, and he's basically the only person that I shoot with right now. But I
Nice.
went to meet someone at his studio, and he asked me. He was like, "Are you here with the photo shoot?" So no, I'm just meeting someone here, and he asked me, "Was I a model?" And I was like, "I had done one photo shoot like earlier in that week," and I said, "No, I'm an electrician by trade, right?" And thinking he was like, "You what? An electrician?" And he was like, "No." So he was like, and he's like, "You have this crazy look," and he said, "Would you let me do a photo shoot for you?" And I'm like, um, "Okay, sure." So he said, "Can you come back this afternoon?" So when I came back, I had a whole suitcase full of stuff. He said, "You just carry the stuff around?" I said, "No, I just actually did a photo shoot on the way to Atlanta earlier in the week." So I had all these things. And so I've done several photo shoots with him since then. And the one that was in the magazine Bold Journey was from I think the one we did probably a couple of months ago. But he's a really great photographer, very easy to work with, makes you feel really good about it. And he takes some great shots. But Bold Journey reached out to me and asked me about just telling them about my journey and my story. So I was very grateful to share my story with them, so people could. Like I said, I talk about just coming up through the skill trades and just where I am now. So go from electrician to executive to entrepreneur. So yeah, that's my article in Bold Journey, Keisha L. Blair.
How did they come across you? Did they tell you, like, had they been following you on social media? Like how did they find out about you?
I don't know, honestly, because I'm trying to think because I know that you can refer people. So I
Hmm.
think, if I'm not mistaken, my son, he may have referred me, but I still think that they get so many referrals, they have to go through and look at them. So I never
True.
asked the editor, but I'm sure they had to go and look to see who, before they don't just reach out to just anybody, because I'm sure they get a lot of referrals.
True
But I
that.
believe my son may have been the one that nominated me or put my name in there. My son, he's an artist, Bishop Osai. So yeah, I think he dropped my name in the hat.
Cool, cool. There is one bonus thing I'm gonna touch on as we wrap up, because obviously my show, not only do I talk about, being procrastination, but I'm also helping women authors, like first time women authors who are aspiring, that have gone through a trauma or transition find healing through writing their first book. And I know you have one within you. So I'd love to kind of talk about that, what your where you are in the journey, like how the experience has been for you, and what would you share with these ladies that are watching that may be considering writing their books as well? Maybe they're starting from scratch.
I thought we was gonna get through this whole episode without you asking me about that book.
I know.
Oh, so yeah, so my book is Alpha Intuition, Don't Stop, Keep Climbing. That just basically tells my journey into entrepreneurship. And I basically start with the me being eliminated from my job. I keep saying me, but I wasn't eliminated, I was elevated. But I talk about how my position was eliminated from the last job that I held in corporate, and just talk about just my journey of everything that I went through and things that I thought about. So it's basically, and I wanted to make it more interactive. So release date is still set for November 21st. That is my birthday. My numbers are 1121. So it has 11 chapters, 21 principles. And then
Love
I
it.
infuse my faith in it. So, my numbers are, and if you look on my podcast, every season has 21 episodes. So that's just my thing, my 1121. But I wanted it to be something practical, something that's like, so it's like part story, part workbook, part faith-based. So it's a lot of different moving pieces in there, but hopefully it will resonate with people and they'll find it as helpful as I did finding it helpful to write for me, because just having to go back and think about those stories and, those moments that I didn't really want to deal with, when you have something traumatic that happens in your life. And for me, leaving up somewhere that I had been for 10 years and basically feeling like it was a family and not knowing that I wasn't going to go back the next day. It was a traumatic experience for me. So having just to think about how I was going to tell that story. And I'm such a positive, I try to be a positive person. So I didn't want to tell it in a negative light. So I told it from my perspective of how it helped me to get to where I am now, how it helped me on my health journey, how it helped me on my leadership journey, helped me on my entrepreneurship journey. So hopefully I don't tell too much about the book, but and Melissa, she's always pushing me to write this book. So I have to make sure that I keep myself where I need to be, because my release date is going to be 11/21, November 21st.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. And don't miss what she shared in there. Like the nugget that I want to highlight for our viewers is, you guys probably saw the episode that where I talked about how to write through the point where you get triggered, because you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
the part of your journey that is the most traumatic, or the point in your transition that is the most uncomfortable or embarrassing. But if you notice the cheat code that Keisha just gave, which is pointing it to the perspective of where you are now, like how
Mm-hmm.
that trauma, how that painful part springboarded you to the positive part of your life now. And that's a great way to pull yourself forward out of the reliving of the pain, the reliving of the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great way to shift perspective. I wanted to highlight that, Keisha. So thank you so much for that. So
Yeah.
please, as we close, let everybody know where they can find you, all the different places where they can find you.
Oh, yes. So I am Keisha the Electrician. So you can find me on Instagram at Keisha_the_electrician on Instagram and on YouTube. And my podcast is Alpha Intuition. That's on YouTube exclusively. People ask me, why am I only on YouTube? Because I'm a technician by heart. And technicians, whenever we need to find how to fix something, we're going on YouTube. So my tribe, my people, we on YouTube. So and then on LinkedIn and Facebook is Keisha L. Blair. And I always like to tell people, don't forget the L. The L is very important, because sometimes you got to take a lot of L's in life to get to where you want to be.
Oh,
So it's Keisha L. Blair.
very good. Y'all see that? She can't help that. That's the coach. She had to drop a gem right at the end. I love it. I love it. Keisha, thank you so much for being on the pod. You are welcome anytime. And hey,
Thank
I don't know
you.
about my audience, but I certainly look forward to your book, Alpha Intuition, coming out, because that sounds like something I need to read. I'm somebody that loves to grow. So like I love being sharpened. So like again, she mentioned Erwin McManus's book, The Seven Frequencies of Communication. By all means, I recommend that book too. Like it's a game changer. So yeah, definitely look into that, you guys. Keisha, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you for having me. Peace, guys.
Was that not a bomb interview? As promised. Be sure to take note of all the different ways that you can follow and interact with Keisha if she's someone you're interested in connecting with. If you are someone who's watching this as an event coordinator and you're looking for a speaker to book, Keisha is somebody you'll want to book. She knows her stuff, especially as an extreme execution change agent. She talks about the extreme execution, flight assessment, and helps teams iron out their communication issues. She also, of course, specializes in leadership development. So if that's something your team needs, by all means, definitely book her to speak. If you're someone who's in the school system and you're looking for speakers to inspire your students, Keisha is the person for that as well. She'll inspire your kids to learn more about themselves, the importance of self-awareness, and help them in their leadership development as well. As I mentioned in the episode, run back those frameworks. Her frameworks are amazing. She is definitely somebody you want to be in touch with, have as your coach, or have as your speaker. But stay tuned for next Wednesday's episode. You guys already know. Come ready to take notes. All of the episodes are always packed with value. If you haven't subscribed yet here, be sure to do so on YouTube at Getting the Win. You can follow me on Instagram, Pinterest, and Threads at Getting the Win Show. You can follow me on TikTok at Melissa T. Wright, and I'm also on Spotify. So if you're an audiophile, be sure to follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Getting the Win Show on Spotify, okay? But in the meantime and between time, I hope you have a great and productive rest of your Wednesday and a great and productive rest of your week. Peace.